All right, welcome back to another episode of Million Dollar Fast Track, where Barron's Top 100 producer Erin Botsford helps advisors answer their most pressing questions. And today's question is all about comprehensive planning versus retirement planning. What are the differences and why your high net worth individuals, those ideal clients, are looking for one and not the other. So Erin, tell us more about your philosophy and how you viewed comprehensive financial planning.
Yeah, that's a word that's kind of misunderstood in our industry. Everybody would say, I do comprehensive financial planning. I always said I did comprehensive financial planning. And in my mind, comprehensive means I got all the money. So something happened early in my career because I was taught to do retirement and investment planning. And that was the comprehensive nature of what we did. And so I would invest money, place it where I was supposed to, et cetera, et cetera. Well, way back when I was new in the business, a couple came in and the man, let's call them Mike and Dee. Mike had just retired from a pharmaceutical company and he had plenty of money. So they came in and we looked over all their stuff, and their plan was from age 55 to 70, they wanted to travel the world. They want to travel internationally. In fact, they came in with a spreadsheet was where they're going to be every month for 15 years. I was like, oh my gosh. And when they turned age 70, then they were going to come back and start travel domestically in the United States. Now, granted, I kind of heard in the back of my head that they had some children and maybe they had some grandchildren, but back then we didn't really ask about them. We didn't go much further than how much money do you have? How much income do you need to retire on, etc. So I did what I was taught to do and I placed the money, and I did a great job doing that. And it was time for Mike and Dee to go off and see the world. Well, about 5 weeks after we placed the money, I got this terrible phone call from Mike and Dee. Their oldest son, Michael Jr., had died in the driveway of a heart attack while he was washing his car. He had a stay-at-home wife with 4 young children. He had a huge mortgage on his house. He had just borrowed $800,000 to start a business, and he had no life insurance. Well, what do you suppose happened to my clients' plans? My clients' plans were devastated. Of course, this is their oldest son, and these are their 4 grandchildren. And in fact, I found out they had 4 children and 11 grandchildren. So Mike and Dee's plans for 15 years of international travel were shattered. And so instead of traveling overseas, they end up becoming the primary caregivers for their 4 little grandchildren. Their daughter-in-law had to go back to work because their son had no life insurance. And my clients end up carting their grandkids back and forth to school activities, after school baseball, etc. They did this for 10 years. And by the time they were ready, the youngest one was in high school and they could go live out their dreams. Mike's health had deteriorated so badly that they were never able to travel. Now, that was a huge awakening for me. I tell people it was my Scarlett O'Hara moment. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, how could I have allowed this to happen? Of course, I had no power over the fact that this young 41-year-old son died of a heart attack in his driveway. But I could have asked some more questions. I could have asked, Mike, your son, Mike Jr., does he have life insurance? If so, how much? What about his stay-at-home wife? Does she have life insurance? What would happen in their family situation if she died? I could have asked a lot more questions. And that was, like I said, that was my Scarlett O'Hara moment. And from that day forward, I really began doing what we today call comprehensive financial planning. What we do is we have a very in-depth conversation. We call it our visions and values conversation. I always start with the woman in the relationship because she will typically speak more than the man will initially. I always ask about her. Where was she born and raised? I want to know about her mom and dad. Are they of means or are they living on Social Security? If they don't have means and they're living on Social Security, what happens if they have to go into a nursing home? Will the financial obligation come back on you? Mm-hmm. Are there any plans that we need to make? Is there money we need to set aside for them to go into a nursing home? Will the financial obligation come back to you, or are there resources to make that happen? We talk about their brothers and sisters. A lot of times, especially wealthy people, they care deeply about their siblings, their family. Sometimes they want to be a supplement to the Social Security check that maybe their brothers or sisters will receive. We ask about their nieces and nephews. Sometimes I've had wealthy clients choose to put all of their nieces and nephews through college. Then, of course, we talk about their children and their grandchildren. I want to know about their financial situation of all their children and their children's spouses because I never wanted to have something happen again that happened to me very early in my career. As I say, I believe our job is to identify any potential, I call them train wrecks, that could come along and disrupt my clients' plans to have a wonderful, comfortable retirement or whatever their goals are. And I think it's our fiduciary duty to make sure that we uncover these vulnerabilities that could eventually wreak havoc in our clients' lives.
And I think that this is such a powerful story because I feel like so many times we look back at all the plans that we've made for our clients and we think I did everything right. And
Mm.
you did if you're doing just retirement planning. But the hard truth is, like for Mike and Dee, they would have gladly spent money on life insurance for their kids and everybody else if they had just known. So there are all the things that you did right, but then it opened your eyes to all the other things that are there. And I think that there's so many vulnerabilities that you can uncover as a really good financial director, like what we train on here at the Advisor Authority. And it gets a lot of advisors to think, well, I don't know how to solve all these issues. And
Mm.
you usually would tell them, well, there's kind of a trick here. I don't want you to solve them. Here's what I want you to do instead. So tell us more about that property manager setup.
I have a list of 26 areas of vulnerability. And advisors should use this checklist of 26 areas to check off, nope, that doesn't exist. They're okay there. This could never come back and bite them. This is fine. And so sometimes they would say, but Erin, some of these things that you talk about, I wouldn't know how to fix these problems. And so I said, you know what? The really good news is you don't have to know how to fix them, but you do need to be able to identify the potential problems or potential vulnerabilities may exist. And so I created a new paradigm, something for them to think through. And I call that the paradigm of the property manager. So we always position our advisors to be the financial directors of our clients' lives. We want to know everything that goes on. If it involves a dollar figure, we want to be right in the middle of that. But then I say, think of yourselves instead of a financial director, think of yourselves as a property manager. And I use this illustration. I split my time between Dallas, Texas, and Park City, Utah. When I'm not in Park City in particular, I have a property manager named Harry, and he comes to my home every Friday. Harry goes into the house and he flushes all the toilets. He turns on all the spigots. He opens up the counters and see if there's any water dripping anywhere. He goes around the perimeter of my house looking for potential problems. Well, not too long ago, Harry called me up and said, Erin, you have two potential problems in your house. And I said, oh, Harry, what are they? He said, well, you have in your downstairs in your basement, one of your bedrooms, in the bathroom, there's a toilet that's leaking. He said, if we don't get this fixed, it could cause a flood in your basement. I was like, oh my gosh, Harry, thank you so much for pointing that out. He also said, he goes, you also have some heat tape on your roof that's not working. If we have another huge snowstorm like we did a couple of years ago, your roof could collapse. And I was like, oh my gosh, Harry, thank you so much for pointing that out. Now, think for a moment. In no way did Harry get on his hands and knees and fix my toilet, nor did Harry get on a ladder and climb up on the roof and fix my heat tape. Instead, Harry identified potential vulnerabilities that existed in my home and that he brought in outside experts to fix those problems. He brought in a guy called a plumber to fix my toilet. He brought in an electrician to get up on the roof and fix my heat tape, which is exactly what we do in our business. As financial directors, if you use this 26-point questionnaire, there's a very high likelihood you're going to expose or identify some potential vulnerabilities in your prospects or your clients' lives. And your only role from that point is to bring in outside experts, professionals to fix those problems.
And it just harkens back to the idea that, as a comprehensive financial planner and a financial director, you're a huge connector. You're the one who's going to connect them with the resources that they need to get these problems fixed. But the job first starts with you identifying all these vulnerabilities, all these problems that we need experts for. And that is exactly why they will pay you for the financial plan, because no one's going to look at it the way you will. So this was an excellent episode. I want to just, for all of you guys that are listening today and are thinking, man, I am doing financial planning, but it's really just retirement planning. I'd like to learn more on what that can look like to expand my horizons and really see what those 26 disturbing tracks, that line of questions, can really do for my business. I invite you to go to erinbotsford.com, schedule a one-on-one consultation, and we'll show you all the ways we can help you take your business to the next level.